All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Arts ACP Explore podcast. And I have my esteemed guest here, Andrew. Andrew, say hi. Say hi to the world.
Hi to the world. Hey, Dylan. Pleasure to be here. It's good
Yeah,
to see you.
so
Good to speak to you.
absolutely. Good to see you too. And Andrew's on the faculty with me in the music department at MiraCosta. And how long have you been at MiraCosta? You were a student at MiraCosta at one time too, right?
I was a student at MiraCosta many years ago, and I studied with the people who are still on faculty there from that
Wow.
era, which is most of
Yeah.
them. And then I moved on and did other things. It's a junior college, it's a 2-year school. So,
Right.
you know,
That was
if
the
you're not
goal.
moving on and doing other things, then I'm not sure how many associate degrees anyone needs.
Talk to your
But
counselor. Yeah.
there you go. But yeah, that was quite a while ago, and then I've been back for a year on faculty. This previous year was my first, actually.
Wow. And so how did you enjoy the first year?
It's great.
Yeah.
Every school is its own, ecosystem, its own microclimate, I guess, in the world of academia.
Yeah.
I think MiraCosta is a positive environment.
It really is, isn't it? I mean, it's really just a nice,
Yeah.
calm and considerate place in many senses. Yeah.
Yeah, it's considerate, it's warm, it's welcoming. I
Yeah.
think that everybody who's there wants to be there, which is not the
Right.
case at every school.
Yeah.
And it's there's no substitute for having good people
And great
in the
facilities.
place.
Great
And
facilities.
great facilities.
Um,
Absolutely.
Okay, so I usually start these out. I have a list of questions here, but I usually start these out with like a tell me a little bit about yourself and your history, how you reached this professional era and in your life, and we'll sort of pick it up from there.
Sure. We finished the two truths and a lie already, so
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
just stick with the truth for now. No, so I went to MiraCosta many years ago. Back when the world was black and white. No, a while ago.
Right.
Graduated, went to Michigan. I guess if we're going to keep things to kind of an academic perspective, or
Sure.
I don't know what you're.
Whatever you want to share. I mean, it's all pretty relevant, actually. So anything you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay. Yeah. So when I was here, I played with a whole bunch of bands. I am a guitarist, which you can probably see.
I
the
forgot to
guitar,
mention that.
but
Sorry about that.
no, it's all good. Yeah, guitarist. I've played with a bunch of people. I've recorded with a bunch of people. When I was here, it was all kind of like small time stuff. There was a school here in North County, San Diego, called Ubiquitous Music that was founded by a guy named Jack Brooks, who was he was from the East Coast. He went to Berklee School of Music back in the 70s, when it was all kind of gelling or happening
Yeah.
in a big way, when they were formalizing the concept, I think, of jazz education, 70s
Right.
and 80s. So he overlapped with like Mike Stern, John Schofield. Pat Metheny was teaching a couple classes there at the time.
Yeah.
He was present when like George Benson came to tour the school and all kinds of stuff. So I got the chance to study with him, and he kind of turned me on to the idea of jazz as a field of study, which didn't exist in my mind at the time.
Right.
When I started, I was playing rock. It's like, yeah, we're gonna cover Lady Gaga songs. Why not? Make them rock.
There's money
I
in
don't
them
know.
hills right there.
There was no money in it.
Yeah, there's not. But,
But it was
It's
like
flashy.
teenage rock band stuff.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
flashy, sure.
yeah.
But yeah, I got the chance to study and work with Jack Brooks, and he took me in a really big way. He was a critical figure in my life musically. He gave me albums to listen to, all kinds of cool stuff. Like I finding out about Keith Jarrett, or I mentioned Schofield before, or Pat
Oh, yeah,
Metheny,
yeah.
all these guys who I had no idea existed previously. And he'd give me an album and he'd say, oh, yeah, try to count how many times this thing happens, or try to listen for X, Y, or Z, getting me to listen a little more critically and get into the music rather than just having it be an auditory experience, having it be something that I tried to actively participate in.
Yeah.
So he was influential for me in a really big way. I went to school. I started going to community college because I was in a kind of homeschooling program.
Right.
And so tuition was free. It was included within that program, not homeschooling exactly. It was a charter program. And so I took a couple classes at another community college down here in North County, and then I ended up going to MiraCosta after that when I had graduated high school. And I found really great faculty who are into what they do. I found a bunch of students who were my peer group at the time, who were interested in growing and developing and learning and doing new things and you know, getting deeper into the music and their study of music. Yeah, and I appreciated that, and I tried to get everything I could out of MiraCosta and contribute everything I could to MiraCosta as a student. I ended up transferring out after 3 years, 2.5 or 3 years. And I went to Southwest Michigan. I went to Western Michigan University after going to a whole bunch of auditions at various places. And that got on my map because I ended up touring through Chicagoland and West Michigan with Matt Falker as part of his group Frequency. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's the school that he went to, Western Michigan University.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, Western Michigan is a wildly esteemed music school. I mean, it's a really well-known, especially for band and orchestra too. I mean, there's a lot of
wind band.
Exactly, like prestigious history in this school. So, anyways, check it out. Carry on.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff that goes on or has gone on at Western Michigan University, including a really great music therapy program.
Yeah.
That was run by Ed Roth for many, many years, and I think he's in Texas now, in Dallas. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on there.
Which is a burgeoning field as well. I mean, and connected to neuroscience study to further the sort of scientific, bed or fundamentals of why that's an effective tool for treatment of a lot of different things. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what he was involved in was he was the interface between the music department and the neurosciences.
Yeah.
There's a large medical school at Western Michigan University as well, the Howard Stryker Medical School. It's the home of Stryker instruments, and there's a bunch of pharma as well in Southwest Michigan. So it's a medical hub in some ways.
Wow. I see. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, back to your point, right? Ed Roth was the tie-in in a big way, and so he actually oversaw some of the research as well into the field of music therapy. And so I was fortunate enough to work with him, fortunate enough to work with Jeremy Siskind, who's a really incredible musician, pianist, composer, arranger, and he's located now in LA.
Okay.
With Andrew Rathbun, who's an incredible composer, arranger, saxophonist, killer musician. There are a bunch of great musicians in Southwest Michigan and the associated area. And so
it's really cold in the winter, so you can just practice a lot.
You lock yourself in a room in your shed, and then on the way to the gig, you skid and can't stop properly. And even before you get to the gig, you have to warm your car up for a couple hours.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there's a whole process of defrosting yourself throughout the Michigan experience.
That too.
But yeah, a lot of time to practice, a lot of time to get really good.
Absolutely. And then you cut out for a second, and you were on it already. Anyway, so yeah, I went to Western Michigan University. I got my bachelor's degree. I was part of a band called Lushh in Western Michigan. We were sort of a fusiony electronic jazz group. I had some writing opportunities. I got to write for Nonette, for big band, and then a bunch of smaller group writing as well. And then, kind of towards the end of my time at Western Michigan University in post-graduation, I got together with a musician in Grand Rapids named Cameron Blake, who's just this incredible singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, just gorgeous musician, beautiful folk musician, great person, the whole gamut. And so I was fortunate to work with him. I worked with a bunch of musicians sort of based in Chicago or Chicago adjacent who do free music, free improvisation, and kind of experimental music. Was part of a group called Bridge Band for a long time with a guy named Sasquatch, who it plays what it sounds like. And then I ended up doing a master's degree also at Western Michigan University in composition. And so I got the chance to kind of dive a little bit deeper into, I guess, something adjacent to new music and kind of taking off modern jazz. I was able to write some music for the U.S. Navy Commodores, which was fun, and then for a bunch of people around Michigan for my own bands, all that kind of stuff. And then I taught at Western Michigan University during that time, and then I also taught at K College, which is a smaller private four-year school in Kalamazoo,
And
as well
when
as
you
privately.
were, I'm sorry, when it's sax, can we go back to sax squatch for a minute there? Because
Sax Squatch.
I have to apologize. I've never actually done that particular mistake before, so the new one. But
That's
can
how
we
we
go
learn.
back to sax squatch? I'd like to. What exactly happened there? You were kind of doing some free jazz out there.
It
Is that
was a
what's
whole
going
bunch
on?
of stuff. Yeah, so there was free jazz. There was this. I got a bunch of opportunities in the free jazz world to play with some really incredible musicians. Sax Squatch was he's based in Michigan, in Kalamazoo, Michigan. He goes by the name Sax Squatch. Jared Selner. I'm not sure how public that name is, but he had a band for a long time called Bridge Band, and it was like this kind of like aggro rock noise jazz thing, and he's just this like massive presence on the horn. He plays tenor, super loose blowing, massive sound, super fluid, just killer sound, killer approach, killer feel, and he's a great guitarist as well.
Wow, that's
And
okay.
yeah, and he wrote all the music for Bridge Band. That was his project, and it was that kind of thing's really fun to be part of.
Okay, I want to come back to this concept of art music in a minute, but keep going. I apologize.
Okay. Art music. So, anyways, I guess continuing on from the previous train of thought, most of my playing was rooted around, Michigan. Kalamazoo is exactly halfway between Detroit and Chicago.
Yeah.
The halfway marker is found in an underpass in Kalamazoo,
Oh, really?
and so 50% of the distance between the two cities. And
Yeah.
so it was really great proximity to hear the Chicago Jazz Festival,
Yeah.
the Detroit Jazz Festival. There's all this killer Detroit, like house music.
In
It's the
fact,
origin
it's
of
like
house
the
music.
Western origin of house music. Yeah, in
Yeah,
terms of
absolutely.
Germany, then Detroit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of that influence coming into to Kalamazoo, Michigan. There was less overlap with like the jazz scene, but there's all of this electronic music that's coming into Michigan. And then in Chicago, there are great clubs in Chicago. Like the Green Mill has been there for forever and a day, as far as
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But there are tons of other great clubs in Chicago. And so I had the chance to play there, play in Detroit, play in Windsor, Canada, which is just across the border from Detroit, and up through kind of South Wisconsin as well. It was a great opportunity for me.
Yeah.
It was a good place to be. It's a lot of driving to get anywhere, but
Yeah.
it's much more compact than Southern California, for example.
Right.
And there's
Yeah.
less traffic, so you're making up a lot of distance, which feels more accomplished than
Right. At least you're
driving
moving.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a big wedding location, right? West Michigan on the lake. There are tons of wedding venues all throughout the state, from south to north, along the lake and in woods. And there's Holland, which has tulip fields in the spring, and Charlevoix and Traverse City, which are kind of tourist destinations. Petoskey, which is right near Charlevoix, and then going farther south, you get like when you go into Indiana, you get South Bend. So there's Notre Dame right there, and it was close enough to Sweetwater and Fort Wayne, Indiana, that I could go
That's
there
right.
for
Yeah.
the odd Gear Fest they have once a year, which is just this big, massive thing where you can go hear killer producers give clinics and all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of driving. It's not anywhere as centralized as most of Southern California, or obviously a place like, you know, Nashville or New York, but
Yeah.
there's a lot around, which is cool to be part of.
That's great, man. And so you do all that and you get a chance to really experiment and experience the East Coast scene, which is different and in some ways I would say more traditional, but also uh, just I, the art music in the East Coast I sort of connect with in ways that I don't always connect with it on the West Coast.
Mm.
In terms of jazz specifically. Now,
Be
San
interested to pick your
Francisco
brain
might
on
be.
that.
Say it again.
I'm interested to pick your brain on that, but please go on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, San Francisco, so the area I grew up in, it had a burgeoning jazz scene when I was growing up there, but it just got so
Mhm.
expensive for everybody to live that they all moved down to LA. And uh, LA has a great jazz scene, but it's just different. You know, it's different. I mean, it's almost the island equivalent of the East Coast or something. Like the weather being better. I know this sounds really weird to people. They're like, it can't be the weather. I'm
No.
telling you, I've lived both places. It's the weather. Um, there's something about the not having seasons in the
Mhm.
same way that they do on the East Coast. Just the the sort of heritage of musicianship that's on the East Coast versus the West Coast has a massive influence on the way that music is consumed, the way that the public thinks about music, the way that's
Mhm.
incorporated into the general society, and also the level of art music you can sometimes get away with. Um, and on the East Coast, my experience was you get away with a lot more art music than you can sometimes on the West Coast. Not in every possible, and you know things are really changing now. Jazz is kind of it's really making a resurgence, but there's been times here where it was a dearth of anything straight ahead at all. It felt like I don't know if that's your
Right.
experience at all.
That is, it is.
Yeah,
You know, when before I moved out to Michigan, I
yeah.
would go up to LA, and the Blue Whale was around then,
It
and
was the
so it's
blue
like
whale.
that's
Yeah,
the place. You go to the
yeah,
Blue Whale, you're going to hear a whole bunch of killer musicians coming from New York, you know.
yeah.
But then there was great music happening here even at that time. You know,
Sure.
I had the chance to hear Joshua Nelson performing, and Austin Peralta before he passed,
Mm,
and like it just killer musicians. Like my first experience of a really like impeccable upright bass sound was Hamilton Price
oh wow.
here, you know.
Yeah,
And to this day,
yeah.
like that's an unmatched sound in my head, and maybe I've
Sure.
I've embellished it mentally, but like just like beautiful ringing resonant tone that still sounds like an acoustic instrument, which is hard, I think, for upright players to always balance. But
Yeah.
yeah, so there's I think there's always been good music, but it was never at that time. At that time, this is years and years and years ago before I left Southern California. It wasn't like that was common or typical. You know,
Yeah.
there are great Southern California musicians based here in San Diego,
Sure.
and there was a kind of overriding mindset of, yeah, I'm killing time until I leave
Mm,
for New
yeah.
York,
Right.
right? That was the destination, period.
Yeah.
If I'm going to continue working in music, pursuing music vocationally, and I want it to be jazz, that's where I go, period. Done. End
Yeah.
of story.
Sure.
And I think it's maybe more recent that, oh, what's his name?
Robert
I'm gonna
Glasper or
I'm gonna
something
move
like
on.
that, or oh, okay.
What's that?
It'll come to you. It'll come to you.
Yeah, or it won't, and then I'll text you at 3 a.m.
There we go.
No, I think there's been a lot of movement to LA
Yeah.
since that time.
Yeah.
You know, now there's the entire both coasts kind of mindset of like, you
Sure.
know, I'm going to be Ben Wendell and split time, but maybe I'm mostly New York based, or, you know, David Binney moved out here and now he's just based in Southern California and that's it.
I didn't know that.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And then it seems like there's been maybe not an exodus, but some level of movement out of New York City.
Yeah.
certainly around the time of the pandemic. And I'm not sure that that's continued necessarily, but
Right.
I think it became a little bit less of a hub. I think not that it's not a hub. What I mean to say is that I think there's been some level of decentralization
Yeah. There's probably
since
social
that time.
media has some connection to that, and other elements that have garnered more interest in jazz and, you know, more sort of scholastic forms of music, for lack of a better
Mm,
term, across the country.
I like that term.
It, yeah, and I think with kids in particular, there's this real interest in virtuosity that may not have been there a while ago, and so that sort of creates a supply and demand uh, need in all places. Even Nashville turned
Mm,
into a little bit of a jazz hub, and other places. And LA was always a jazz hub, but it was really known for smooth jazz at the time. And
sure.
so,
Or like the cool
yeah,
scene.
exactly, exactly. And I think, and San Francisco was just sort of we were always just copying New York pretty much. And so, I mean, we were doing a good, decent job, but it was a smaller scene. And so, but New York, like you were saying, was when I was a kid, everybody wanted to move to New York as well, or somewhere near New York, you know. Um, but so you go away to school, you get some teaching experience while you're out there, and then you play and you do some touring, and you end up. Do you make any albums, or was there any sort of like kind of
Hmm.
assets where you felt like, okay, this was a seminal change for me in terms of my artistic development?
Yeah. I think probably the most, I guess the greatest exemplar of that perspective, right, of a seminal artistic change would be a
Yeah,
project that I did for my electronic jazz group, which was a group called Lushh,
cool.
with a wind quartet and a singer. And it was completely my music, my concept, my approach. It was a
Yeah,
chance that I had to just do the whole thing.
right.
But there was still a collaborative element to it. We had a couple of painters who did live painting for this
I
project.
love it. Yeah.
And then we had a visual element to it as well, where a student in the MAT program, Alex Tobin, he stepped in and he oversaw this interface with the MAT program where they created a live visualization tool.
Yeah.
And so they had the entire board input also being routed to this visualization tool. So every single element of the music could have an impact on the visualization that was
It's
created.
like
And
triggering some sort of alteration potentially in the visualization
yes,
tool. Yeah, that's cool.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so there
Yeah.
were some things that were extremely rhythmic in the visualization, and there were
Hmm.
some things that kind of floated on top and used all of the auditory input for kind of manipulation or changes in a slower scale way. And it was a really cool thing to do. That was all projected live. And so the painter's task was to, um, it, it, I guess I should backtrack actually. The whole thing was based on sleep cycles, dreams, and perspective of
Oh,
time.
wow. Yeah.
And so the pieces were literally named after elements of the sleep cycle.
Oh, wow.
And the poetry was all there was a poetry component as well. Some of it I wrote, and some of it was pre-existing that was incorporated into the music one way or another. All of it was to do with perspectives on time and our own mental states,
Wow.
and through the lens of dreaming.
Yeah.
And so the visual element was about the idea of using time as a depiction in the visual realm, right? Music is inherently a time-based
Right.
process. Frequency is literally a measurement of time,
Right.
right?
Right.
Occurrences over time. And so I felt like that was covered already. That was the immediate term kind of thing. And then the visualization was kind of a one step back approach to time, where now you're going to take a slightly broader moment and you're going to evaluate it in another sensory way. And then the
Yeah.
painting was an even longer view perspective, where we've got these two canvases, two painters working, and they're capturing the entire impression of the thing over the course of the entire concert performance event into one distinct visual component.
Yeah.
And so there was kind of a 3-layered perspective on time that was nestled into this performance focused on sleep.
Yeah, that's
and
really
so
cool.
that was, yeah, I had fun with it.
And so, by the way, is this something students or anybody watching this could view online somewhere? Is this available anywhere?
You can find it for free on my website.
On your website?
It has the extremely appealing name of the Sweet Sleep Suite.
The Sweet Sleep Suite. We need some more of this. Yeah, just a second. The Sleep Suite.
There you go.
Say it one more time for me. Just
Sweet Sleep Suite.
Sweet Sleep Suite.
The
All right,
first
kids.
suite being SWEET, the second one being SUITE.
Now you'll let me know if I'm having a stroke, right? You'll tell me. You wouldn't just let me. Okay. So
I've got 911 on speed dial.
okay, good. So So I'm not going to try to say it again. I'm not, because
That's
I don't want to. I don't want to. But
it was
kids,
also
go check
it was
out.
subtitled. It was subtitled Insight Unsought,
Oh wow!
which is another silly name but a little more speakable.
You know what so and if this sounds sort of radical to any students that view this, I think it's not radical in the sense that the idea is extremely inventive in like, it's a very creative concept, but this idea of like this multimedia concert is something that's been around for a long time. I mean, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a really it's an undertaking that you might take on as a graduate student, or as you develop your craft more, that as you take more on, I'm sure you're like, wow, this is just becoming more and more work, and I'm both exhilarated and terrified at the same time. I mean, was that your experience with this?
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my initial perspective on it was, I've got this idea for a thing. Let me just work on it
Yeah.
for myself,
Yeah.
And then there's a whole bunch of scribbling things down and note taking, and which page did this, which piece did this page belong to? And it's this one, but this section is a whole bunch of just disambiguated things, scribblings.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was just for me, and it was fun, and it was rewarding. That's
Right.
like the most fun part of doing something, is when you get to conceive of the big picture and start filling in all of the ways that it could be executed in practice.
Yeah. Right.
And then over time, you have to start developing a pinpoint to it, right? Because you can't give people this big, broad thing and expect them to make anything of it.
Yeah.
If you've got something that exists in your head, that's great, but it doesn't mean anything if you can't express it.
Right. Right. And it might not look
so,
anything like what you envision either, unless you can
and
define it.
that's a hard thing to
Yeah.
deal with. I had to learn not to share unfinished work with
Yeah.
people, just because somebody's perspective on something is going to be completely colored by their own situation in life, where they're at, what they're thinking, what they had for breakfast, maybe how they slept the
Sure.
night before.
Yeah.
And if you're giving them something that has no clarity to it, no direction to it,
Right.
then that it's like you're sharing a prompt with them, but you're not giving them any guidance on how to perceive it. And at that point, you're sharing something that maybe they could take and turn into something in their mind, but that's not a good expression on your part.
Right.
The general
That's
you.
sort of delegating out some of the creative process that you may or may
think
not
so.
want to delegate.
Yeah. That's a great perspective to have too, because some things you do want to delegate. If you
Exactly.
prescribe everything
Yeah.
for people to the nth degree, to the point where they have no
And you don't
ability-
capitalize on their gifts necessarily. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so my perspective on this initially was, oh yeah, this is fun, this is great. I get to draw these connections and realize how they develop. And as it became, more of a thing, some degree of presentable, then at that point I started getting into my own head and going, oh, the musicians are going to hate this notation. How can I change this? How can I develop this to be a little clearer? This is unmetered, but how do I still want these pauses to be interpreted correctly. I still
Sure.
want this, whatever to be whatever, you know.
Well, and you take this
At the end of the
process of
day, as a composer, as somebody directing other people to do a thing, your job is
right,
to facilitate communication. And whatever
absolutely,
vision you have, just like we were talking about before about delegation, you've got to make sure that you can get people on board with presenting the thing in an effective way.
yeah, and you take a process of creation that's very disordered by nature and chaotic, and then when you put order on it or around it or in it, you know you can kill it. You can end up just it doesn't look anything like it did when you initially started, or you can end up not enjoying that process very much, the
Mm-hmm.
ordering of a creative thing, and then when you start adding other people in it, it really does become a leadership role and an administrative role on top of a creative role, and it's a lot of plates to spin at the same time. And it's no wonder why many people don't ever do anything like this, right? Because it's daunting, is the real concept. But it's daunting maybe in the best ways because, I mean, these are the things you look back for the rest of your life on, and and they demarcate time. It's funny that your thing's about time because it demarcates time, much like a marriage or having a kid, or you know, these are like these are life defining experiences of self expression. So I think they're while they're daunting, they're unavoidable if you want to try to, you know, live true to what you could do in life, you know?
Well, if you live a life with no markers, no features, no
Yeah.
defining moments, then
Yeah.
that's, you know, if you can be content doing that, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, and there are people who are content with that
Sort of depends on your
and live in
temperament.
the moment,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that's a great thing too. But if you want defining moments, I think you have to make them.
Yeah. So this is a big defining moment because this sounds, you know what uh, it's not necessarily a one for one at all, but have you ever heard of Carnival by Dolly? It was with Dolly, Eric
Oh,
Satie, and I forget the name of the fashion designer, but it was basically the first fashion show. And so Eric Satie did oh well, Dolly did the costumes. I'm sorry, Dolly did the
oh
costumes, and
goodness.
so there's like this is by the way I think this is the late 1800s, so 1890s, and I could be wrong, could be early 20th century, but there's women coming out dressed as cigarette packs, and there's like you know all these different. It was really and there's very odd shapes, you know, a very Daliistic type of thing, and Eric Satie, and most people don't know Satie was actually a also a very modern composer in addition to the gymnopeds, and so there's not it's not all just calm meditative music that this person wrote, um, and so but it was a visual uh, it was visual art that wasn't theater, it wasn't acting, it was a manifestation of the music in visual
Mm-hmm.
form, and uh, and that hadn't been done a ton prior to that. You know, I think you could argue dance is a manifestation of the music, but I mean, in a
Oh,
sort of artist controlled manner from the front end. Really, really interesting. And there's actually, I think it must have been the early 1900s because I think there's really terrible video of it. Yeah. Anyways, so it sort of reminds me of something like that. You know, so something that's really kind of like an axiom of one's career, to where because there's so few times in your life where you're going to be able to devote that level of attention to just pure muse, you know. Yeah,
yeah. So I'm not familiar with Carnival,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so that's something that I've got to check out. But that's
You'll dig
amazing.
it. Yeah, you'll really dig it. It's the first fashion show from what I remember about it. Yeah, so it's really pretty cool. And the costumes, you're like, hey, that would if you put those together now, people would show up to this. You know, they were wild. um, but okay, so now, so we've talked a little bit about your career, and you play seven string guitar. You play not just regular, you also play some classical guitar too, right?
Well, I'm not a classical guitarist.
Okay,
I am fortunate to have a couple of nylon string guitars that are really beautiful, and I try to make a good sound with them. But there's a
sure.
world of sound development in particular, but in the world of technique, classical guitar is a singular thing,
It really
and
is, yeah.
I'm not that.
Okay. So I mean, you would describe your like your chief genre as jazz guitar and popular guitar, basically?
Um, I, yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
We could go down the rabbit hole of what that even
I
means,
know.
but
I know.
yes.
Which is for the kids. But so shifting over to some of the questions I like to ask folks about,
Mhm.
sort of on the student's behalf. So
Sure, yeah.
you're a little closer to being a student than me. Can you talk about some of the habits that you developed to become a very successful student and that also have bred success into your professional career?
Yeah. Well,
And that's a tricky question.
you're asking for overlap, but I think that they're all the same habits.
Hmm.
I don't think you can separate out habits that make for a good student and habits that make for somebody who can achieve a successful career.
Yeah.
And I think the main thing that it makes sense to develop, or that someone needs to develop, is there are enough main things that I'm having to think about this a
That's all
little
right.
bit
You
and
can have a
how
lot
I'm
of
going
main
to
things.
organize
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so habit wise, I think that developing a habit first off is important. And what I mean
Yeah.
by that is whatever you do, you have to keep doing.
Mm,
And if there's no momentum behind what you're doing, and you're having to build up your mindset and your focus and your discipline for the thing basically from scratch every time you sit down to do it,
mm.
then you're lost already.
Yeah.
So I think having a perspective on whatever you're doing that lets you build momentum is important. And that's kind of you can think of it in terms of meditation or repetition or rote or diligence and scheduling or whatever terms. I think everybody approaches it differently,
Uh-huh.
but I think that everybody who's successful has a recurring approach to however they're doing what they're doing.
So process.
A process,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like, and they're consistent in their process enough that they can see measured results, which helps them feel motivated.
Yes, and
Okay.
results are good. There's kind of a counter, like a dark side to this whole thing too, which is
Hmm.
where sometimes people chase the results to the point where they actually are detrimental to their own process.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that maybe as a counter or as a balance or a guiding energy for the sense of process, you have to know what your process is for,
Mm.
and you have to be okay with that thing needing a process to get to.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
Like you have to have a long-term goal, and you have to know that you can't cheat your way to it and get there overnight. I think with music, this is especially salient
yeah.
because I know a lot of people who want to do something musically, and they have a very singular goal, and they are extremely diligent about getting to that goal, but they shortcut how they're doing it, and then they burn out in a couple of years, and they have hand issues or back
Yeah.
issues or neck issues or
Yeah.
body issues of some sort, and then all of a sudden they have to take long breaks. They can't perform often. They get repetitive strain injuries,
Yeah.
whatever.
That's real. By the
So,
way, that's real. We should spend some time talking about that, but keep going. Keep going.
sure.
Yeah.
So, I guess if we're going to boil this down, the most important thing that somebody can develop as a successful student and for having a successful career is have a slow and steady sense of what your long term goals are
Hmm.
and a process that will help you reach them in the healthiest and most effective way over that long term.
Okay. I think that's fantastic. And the if I could just add to one thing you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about is, if you're when you were talking about rewards or feedback or whatnot, if
Mm-hmm.
it's externalized feedback that's driving you, that's going to have a diminishing return. You need external feedback that's positive to feel good, but you don't. If it's the chief driver, that is going to be something you don't have control over, basically. So I can't control whether you validate me, but I can control whether I validate me. So if I feel
Mm-hmm.
as though I'm making progress based upon my metrics of sort of notches and saying, okay, this is the next micro goal, then I'm going to be internally rewarded for what I'm doing, and that is something that
Absolutely.
I have total control over and can consistently replenish as I go through a process. So that's a chief component to like dopaminergic reward based systems, and I think that's exactly what you were describing. So it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
and
a study, the Alexander technique. Frederick
yes,
Matthew Alexander has this whole
yeah,
perspective on use of the self. His book is called The Use of the Self. But there's this concept called end gaining,
Hmm.
which is where somebody compromises the process that they use to achieve a result in order to superficially achieve the result.
Yeah.
But it's usually something that's harmful ultimately, because they're not engaging themselves in a healthful way
Yeah.
in the pursuit of that result. And so they end up doing things that look like they're achieving whatever they're achieving, but it doesn't work. Similarly, if you're looking for external reward, like you mentioned, then I think you can't get that consistently from anybody else, period. Just
Yeah.
you said that already. But also there's a diminishing return to that, where if you try depicting your accomplishments to other people, then there's burnout, I think.
Yeah.
On social media, you always see people doing these incredible, amazing, wonderful, just like borderline, like limit of
Product.
human possibility things.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And then everything you see from them is the same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
when a 16-year-old prodigy comes out and just wows the world, and then 20 years later, they're still doing exactly the same thing. They found their niche that got them acclaim, and then they're still getting just that same kind of acclaim, but the audience for it tapers down and down and down and down and
Because
down and
that
down.
audience is looking for novelty, and they're sort of looking for kind of a short-term gratified novelty of almost being clever rather than necessarily being I don't want to say intelligent because I don't want to put anybody down, but it's not the same thing to be clever as it is to be sort of accomplished. Um,
Mhm.
Being clever is really important in the short term, but being clever doesn't necessarily mean. Here's something he also just said that was really interesting, and I think it relates. The injury phenomenon is probably the greatest manifestation of this that I've seen, which is skipping over a lot of steps to try and get that outcome. And I think you referred to it from the Alexander technique as what was it called?
End gaining.
In gaining.
End gaining.
In gaining. And this is, if you were a weightlifter or you were into some sort of type of sports and you weren't paying attention to form, or you weren't, it's just because playing guitar or playing any instrument or painting or sitting at a computer, I don't know, whatever. It's all a sport at some level in the sense that if you do it in a way that's not sustainable, you won't be able to sustain it. Um,
Absolutely.
so there's this really great physical manifestation of that principle in injuries. And it's proof that youth is wasted on the young kids because there's just no way for you to know the negative, outcome of sitting with bad posture or these other things that are just going to be, you can't know what you don't know. But yeah, so skipping steps is one of the biggest problems with not seeking counsel from a really well qualified practitioner when you're learning how to play an instrument or doing something else in the arts. Is that a fair statement, would you say?
I'd say that's a fair statement.
Yeah.
Well, when you're getting guidance from somebody, you are relying on them to have a wealth of information and experience that you don't.
Yeah.
And that can be extremely hyper specialized, or it can be general.
Mm.
But your whole purpose is that you're trying to understand how to do what you do better, more healthily, more effectively,
Sustainably.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you were talking about with regard to skipping steps. So basically, early on, you talked about I think it was before we started filming, but you had talked about can art be taught? And
Mm.
I think this is where a practitioner does really start to show you fundamental things that you just wouldn't necessarily know and can avoid
Mm.
a lot of unnecessary errors and mistakes. Unnecessary suffering, as the Buddhists would call it. And so I think anytime you can avoid unnecessary suffering, that seems reasonable to me, right? Um,
No, you're an
so
artist. You should seek it out.
you should seek it out. What
It's
are
how
you
you
going to
make
write
good
about?
out,
What
good
are you going to write
art.
about? Do you want anything to write
Yeah.
about? Okay, so that's really cool. So so we talked a little bit about building habits, the habits that served
Mhm.
you, and you almost talked about sort of the thesis of general principle of habits and reward systems, and in a very general way that will apply to all the arts, really, and really all scholastic
Life.
study. Yeah, there we go. Um, so what type of mistakes are you seeing students make that
Mm.
are relatively consistent across the board, and it doesn't, it doesn't have to be classified as a mistake. You can call it just a lack of foresight, or you know, but carry on from there. What type of mistakes are you seeing?
Well, I think one of the recurring quote unquote mistakes is back to that idea of end gaining. It's like an emphasis on the short term.
Uh,
And I think I don't want to generalize and get into like social media
sure.
and meme culture or whatever,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's an idea that like the moment is the thing.
Right.
Like if you can do something and capture the moment, you're done.
Sure.
And I think where that plays out in study is that there's an emphasis on practicing to be able to do the thing.
Mm.
And then you're done.
Right.
I think that's kind of a good starting point,
Sure.
right? But when you're practicing, you've got to be able to do the thing until you can't not do the thing. You have to be able to pull the thing out of a hat at a moment's notice and just do it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's maybe the thing that I see students not developing as much. Like there's an idea that if I sit down in my practice room in the most ideal circumstance possible and I go to play something and I can get there after warming up for 20 minutes and I can finally nail the thing once, then I've done it. I've practiced, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you want to be able to do something at any kind of professional level, you've got to be able to just do it and then keep doing it and then keep doing it again and then again. And I think recording work is a great example of this, because if you get a studio musician into an expensive situation where the producer is waiting on them and the artist is waiting on them, and all of the equipment is set up and the engineer has already gotten everything where it needs to be, and then all of a sudden you go to track,
Do it.
and
Yeah.
and they do the thing once and it just wasn't quite the take for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You don't have an hour to just sit there and do the same thing over and over and over and over.
And then
and
you
over
get in your
again.
head about it, and it turns into,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's the same whether it's a live performance or whether it's a studio situation, or even if you're improvising. There's an idea that improvisation means everything is fair game.
Right.
And if you want to be entirely selfish, then sure.
Yeah.
But you'll have a hard time maybe finding musicians to play with and finding an audience for something that's just purely selfish with nothing else going on.
Yeah.
And
myopic.
And so, yeah, myopic.
Yeah.
And so even in that situation, you have to be able to sustain a level of involvement with whatever's going on around you. You can't just dip in and do your thing and that's it. Sometimes you've got to sustain whatever the atmosphere, the mood, the whatever. You've got to be able to execute that thing and keep it going for sometimes a long period of time.
So
Maybe that's focus.
yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I think it's also the desire to achieve a standard of excellence in the things that you do is kind of what you're describing. You're sort of describing that plenty of room on the extra mile type of mindset, where it's like if you can do something and do it so well that you become associated with excellent uh, execution of whatever that is, then you become an asset to everyone that's in an adjacent field or in that direct field. And I think it's a really great way to capitalize on the hard work that you put into something like that. Whereas if it almost ties into the idea of keeping goals ambiguous versus well defined. So if your goals are extremely well defined, this is like the attributes of really, really top high successful people. They just have very well defined goals. Or businesses that run very well, versus the majority, 95% of the public has very ambiguous goals. And then there's some large group of that cohort that has no goals. And so
Sure.
it's impossible to hit a target you're not shooting at. And it's going to be very hard to hit a target that you have moving around and haven't deciphered or looked for even. And so if we're going to college to execute study in music, and we've picked a field of study, even if it's temporary. So if it's jazz guitar, and we're going to study other types of guitar, but we're studying jazz guitar right now. Okay. The goal is not to simply get through that situation. The goal is to maximize. I don't know if I'm hitting a nerve here, but the goal is to and the way one does such here hitherto goals is to really not have a tendency to want to be involved in things you're already good at. You actually want to get into the weeds and things you're not good at. So, oh, I'm bad. I'm bad at playing against metronome in 2 and 4. Well, let me go home and do that and not do things I'm good at that give me a dopamine hit. Which it's counterthetical to modern life if you think about it.
Yes.
It's not comfortable to chase what you're not good at.
It's absolutely not. And so I think that's why so many musicians, artists in general, have weird complexes.
Yeah.
You know, you get the people who are like hyper confident in every single thing that they do, and then you get the people who are like, is this good?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And everything in between. And yeah, what you're talking about is about having perspective about your goals, right? Rather than having it be a thing that just, you know, lives here. And then when I was talking about being able to execute the thing once, you know, if you're there and you move on and you don't have perspective on owning this thing, then you're only glossing over the surface, right? You're doing what you said about getting through your education. I think if you're bothering to learn something in the first place, why would you waste your time by just getting through it? Why wouldn't you want some level of ownership? And it might not look like you doing whatever the thing that the person teaching you is doing, but you still want to own your education of the thing,
Yeah.
right? Regardless of if you're going to go in the same direction or not.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not expanding yourself.
You're not. And growth is the entire point of school. It's not. Anyways, but because I want
I'm
to go
guessing from
to,
your face, I didn't word that well.
No, you ended it. You worded it very well. I understand exactly what you're saying. But if you want to elaborate, keep going.
Well, let's see. Without starting from the beginning, I guess the entire perspective on education is that if you're not growing, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I'd say that if you're not growing, it's not worth it. If you're going to school for a piece of paper, it's not worth it.
Because it's a self-investment. Yeah.
If you're going to school and you're trying to just kill time for a couple years and come out with a piece of paper and expect that gets you somewhere, then so what? If you commit yourself to the process of doing whatever you're doing, you will develop healthy habits for doing it. And those healthy habits are going to carry over into anything else you could possibly want to learn. And ultimately, that's the point of school, I think, is that you're putting yourself in a concentrated environment where you can focus on something for an extended period of time, commit yourself to it in a big way, and then reap the reward of being that steeped in whatever you're doing. It's not about what you're doing, it's about how you're doing it, in other words.
Yeah.
And if what you're doing is music, you should absolutely commit yourself wholeheartedly to learn the music that you're working on, and you should try to develop yourself as a person from that practice.
Right. The depth of your engagement creates the meaning and the sort of the sense of achievement and the accomplishment and all these other things that everybody's chasing through other means. Yeah.
That is such a great way to say that succinctly. Thank you, Dylan. Yeah.
You know, so something that you just touched on that is really important, and I want to add a caveat to it, is you can do this wrong and still turn around and go back and do it right. So if you've been to junior college, or if you've spent a year in junior college or whatever college, and been non-committal, like my experience with a lot of people is they don't commit all the way because then they never fail because they never really tried, and so it's a lot of it has a lot
You're
to do
never
with the
putting
fear
your
of failure.
ego out on a
Yeah.
limb.
Yeah.
You get
So
to
well, the
maintain
reason
ownership of it within your walled garden.
I didn't fail because I never really tried. And if I had tried, maybe I would have been able to do it. So I never had to kind of face that sort of monomyth of a situation where I faced the dragon or whatever. But I think it it's I don't know anybody that went for this and failed when they followed the path that is well trodden by others that have just completely thrown themselves, because I don't know that failure is even an option at that point, because that journey itself was the success, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So you can be doing this wrong and turn around and do it right. And there's plenty of examples of us. Andrew's not one of them, by the way. He is a well-considered person. But the rest of us, no,
I
I'm
was
joking.
initially a computer science major, which is why
There
I
you
had
go.
3 years at MiraCosta. And
Wow.
that first year did not work out well for me
Yeah.
psychologically. So
Right.
yeah, no, sometimes you have to go back and redo what you did in a totally different way. And for
Yeah.
me, that was finding something that I could actually stand to commit myself to and feel really good about personally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, thanks for sharing that because I think that really helps. A lot of people make a lot of mistakes and then use that as the narrative for a continued amount of failure. But
Hmm.
um, you know, I'm old enough now that I can tell you even students that I've had that were 18 and they were just perfectly aligned and everything was going correct for them and they did incredible work. They everybody makes mistakes. It just tends to be later on in life if that's the case. So I mean, you're gonna make mistakes and you're gonna get in a position where you work against yourself. But the good news is this sort of depth of and the meaning that's available to you by simply just fully engaging in whatever you're doing. That's never not available. It's still there, just waiting for you to come back to it. So um, that's for all of us. I think it's really easy to have life circumstances push us into um, fear-based decisions that hurt our craft and hurt the reason that we're studying the arts and the reason that we're involved in arts education or whatever area of the arts that we're involved in. And so I think you really have to consider it from a student's point of view and reconnect with that as both an instructor and be able to remind yourself of what that feels like and where are you doing it to yourself today, potentially, even as an instructor. So,
Mm.
not you. You're fine. It's the rest of us.
All of us, everyone.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Everything we do needs some level of consideration on an
Yeah,
ongoing basis, and I think you're essentially expressing that, right? How you
yeah,
commit yourself to something isn't like a flip a switch kind of thing. It's even committing yourself to something is process. There's process to that.
yeah, yeah. So I always end these with some sort of career advice for students because making money is part of this. It's a real focus. You may have,
Hmm.
heard there's housing's expensive and all these other factors, and a lot of people are afraid to go after the arts that maybe have an inclination or are really interested. I guess first off, what gives you the gall to chase the arts? How dare you? And second of all, um, you know, what do you think students can do to make it work?
Mm. Yeah. So I guess if you're going to pursue arts in any capacity, you need to be a little bit selfish.
Mm,
Not at the expense of other people.
yeah,
There are degrees of selfish. You just have to be able to commit yourself to something that is self-developmental.
mm,
You know, and I think that for some of the best advice I've heard, I'm going to change tack just a little bit here. Some of the best advice I've ever heard was that if you can see yourself doing anything but being an artist, you should do that.
wow,
And if you can't, then it's the best career in the world.
yeah,
And I think if you are willing to commit yourself entirely to whatever you're doing, you will find some degree of success.
sure,
I think that now, in particular, is a very interesting time to be an artist because AI has become a buzzword, and we're all worried about these massive IPOs, and Anthropic and ChatGPT are going to be the most valuable companies ever. And
right, yeah, yeah,
now there's no work for anybody because we can just generate images in a click, and we have Suno to take away all of our music jobs, whatever. I think this is a great opportunity for artists, and I don't mean that in a way where people are saying that now you have all of these tools, like AI is going to be a great tool and it can transform your art. What I mean is that there's no source of novelty in AI,
mm,
and if you're doing something that has the ability to communicate to other people in a direct way, whatever that is, there is no replacement for that.
right,
None, ever.
sure, yeah,
You can't replace your voice. And if that voice is expressed through the arts, then you've got something really powerful that can't be duplicated. And so the more true you can be to yourself and your own voice in the arts, the more opportunity that you have and the more connection potential that you have, the more you can engage people directly in a meaningful way. And so if you can see yourself doing that, then the arts are fantastic.
sure,
And if you can't, then you know, music is a wonderful hobby. It's enriching.
Yeah.
It's like there's no. It's as engaging as it gets. But you don't have to do it for a career necessarily.
Yeah.
And
You're
so
right.
if you can be really honest with yourself as a student about what you are willing to do career-wise,
Yeah.
then music can still be worth studying, even if it's not something that you're trying to, you know, earn the entirety of your income with. I think that there are pros and cons either way, because I've known musicians who get so into the weeds about their music that they lose sight of their humanity. One of my favorite musicians, one of the people I admire most in music is Wayne Shorter, and he said that your humanity is your instrument.
Mm.
Which I think is a way of saying that if you can communicate the essence of yourself to another person, you're doing things right.
Right.
So, as a student, if you're going to study music, you should use it as a way to expand your humanity. You should bring yourself to the music, and you should bring everything that you are and that you can convey to your music, and your music should be a way of expressing yourself. You should be able to contribute that to a larger voice and work with other people well. You should be able to express something distinct if it's just you even. And I think that if you have something meaningful to say and you are willing to express it publicly and outwardly, you will find some amount of people who are interested and engaged with that. You should also, if you can, be flexible, and you should try to engage with people who maybe you shouldn't have preconceptions about who you're willing to engage with, you know, or how you're willing to express your music. And you should also be willing to do things that contribute to the expression of music, even if it's not just your own voice, like the rising tide idea. You should be able to be a positive contributory member to whatever musical community is going on around you, whatever artistic community is going on around you, and for that matter, just whatever community is around you, because the non-artists around you are the people who are going to be listening to your art, or
Right.
you know, observing and participating in what you're doing. So you owe it to yourself to be a good member of society no matter what. And I think this is maybe a little bit of a you know, step back from what you may have been intending the question to be, and I can re-answer it if you want.
No, no,
But
no. That's the great.
you should be a good
It's great.
person, and you should be willing to engage with people, and you should be willing to engage fully in your own study of the arts.
And so, okay, so that's part one because that's perfect. And then part two is, what are some things that we'll narrow it to musicians just because it's going to be so
Mm-hmm.
specific to each discipline. But what are some tools that you think students can look into in terms of monetizing their craft, um, and niches and areas in the market that you think students can find places to monetize their craft?
Sure. So I think education is only ever going to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger
Hmm.
in a private sphere, if nothing else.
Yeah, a
Because if there's
private's great,
so
by the way, you
much,
guys. Yeah,
what's that?
a private's fantastic, just for everybody
Yeah.
watching. Like being a private music teacher, different tax stat. There's a bunch of tons of positives. So keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, if you're trying to monetize your music, one of the best ways that you can do it is to communicate how to make music to other people who are receptive.
Hmm.
And that's something that's not going away anytime soon or being replaced or subjugated to anything else. Another thing is to be open to possibilities, collaborating with other people, communicating to other people in other spheres. I've known
Yeah.
a lot of people who have been successful contributing music for other media, you know, animation, short movies, things like that. And sometimes that's, you know, essentially a passion project for someone.
Sure.
And sometimes it's something that you know, there can be some backing behind, and it can be a chance to really, you know, make some money and do something a little bit lucrative.
Yeah.
And you only get those gigs if you have a good social sphere and you're engaged with people who are making interesting work.
Yeah.
And the teaching thing, you only get those gigs if you have something valuable to offer other people.
Right.
And that's not just about like nuts and bolts stuff, because anybody can go onto YouTube and find more information than they can digest in a lifetime.
It's methodology. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you
Yeah.
can communicate to somebody in a way that assists their learning and helps them develop their artistry, then there's money there too. I guess the other thing is sometimes there can be overlap with other disciplines. So if you have the tools that make you a good musician, you might find that that helps you be a useful X, Y, or Z as well. There was a mentor of mine at Western Michigan University who said that he would get calls from people who were conducting job interviews. And all of the music students that he interviewed were the most capable learners, like could assimilate the quickest into new tasks and new, fields of study and new fields of execution.
Yeah.
And I think it's a skill set thing. So, if you are not going to be a musician, don't be afraid to develop the skill sets that music can teach you to the fullest and do other things with them.
And realize that they're going to pay off in a lot of different ways. Yeah.
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 It's back to that commitment thing.
Right.
Are you looking for more concrete things that you can do
No,
with
no,
music?
no.
Or...
That was perfect. This is all perfect. Okay. So I think if I could summate everything you said, I mean, the number one word that it sort of cross sections everything you said is being able to communicate. And even if it's communicating authentically as yourself, you have to remove everything that's in the way of you being able to do that. And that could be self-confidence issues. That could be, who knows what you're going to find. But that itself is sort of the journey. And a lot of the suggestions you talked about and the areas and fields you talked about, it points towards the individual needing to be able to be open to not having a script in their life that plays out, that's already written, and being excited about and curious, maybe more importantly, which smells a lot like fear, but it's actually called curiosity, and excitement, is excited about what's around the bend. And from my experience, generally, people don't end up destitute in the arts unless they get strung out, unless they become wildly disenfranchised and their mental health goes down the pot in some way. So it's like, if you keep yourself, your body and your mind healthy, in the sense that you don't make decisions that would ruin anyone's life, frankly, like, this life is still wildly attainable, and the narrative that somehow this is not something that you can get paid doing for the rest of your life is just that. It is a narrative, and it kind of ends at a narrative.
Sure.
Sorry, do you want to add anything
I mentioned that I studied computer science briefly.
Yeah.
That was the safe path, right? That was what
how's
you
that
do
doing now?
because you should do that. Well, yeah, exactly. That's where I was going to go with this, right? Well, why would I hire a computer scientist when I can just
vibe code it?
Code. Yeah, I can vibe code it, and then now there's this kind of ironic resurgence of software engineering jobs where people are trying to have real people fix AI code, and how long is that going to last? I don't know. But
yeah,
if you're only ever pursuing the safest possible option, then I think you're doing a similar thing that we talked about before. You're failing to commit yourself wholly to the process of engaging in something.
Right. Yeah.
Or finding out even what you want to engage with.
Yeah. Yeah. And folks, this is coming from a guy who just had a baby recently, right? I think I even heard the baby just a little while ago. So
you may have heard something. Yeah.
I heard
5
something.
months old now.
Okay, there you go. So a little while ago, it was a little, but so it's not as though life isn't breathing down your neck, and responsibility isn't saying, "Hey, how are you doing?"
It says that every day.
It says that every day.
Every day. Right now, I can.
You can hear it. I can feel the cold rag of responsibility. Well, Andrew, thank you so much. So for everybody out there, Andrew teaches guitar at the college, private lessons, guitar. I think American popular music. Did you teach that?
Well, I taught history of rock and roll in the fall semester, and I taught musicianship in the spring semester. Okay,
great. And so expect to see him in those roles and others at MiraCosta, and take his class. You know what I mean? Check it out and enjoy. Andrew's got a ton of wisdom, especially for someone that hasn't been on the planet forever, and is a great temperament and a great person to sort of be around and garner information from, and to just bounce ideas off of, and a very kind, just very reasonable person who's also very
total
talented.
taskmaster.
Yeah, yeah, right. No, so check him out. Check out the classes, and thank you so much, Andrew, for doing this interview today. Really appreciate it.
Dylan, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to get to speak to you a little bit more and get to know you a little bit more. I hope I can get the chance to get to know you even better.
You got it. Yeah, thanks so much.